Cameron! Hi! Hello! For some reason, all of my Streamlabs stuff broke. And I don't know why. It's completely baffling to me that it all crashed and broke and got beat down. Weird. But hello! I'm working on, at this very moment, opening a dashboard. Because I want to make sure that I still have my dashboard up while I'm streaming in case people do redemptions and stuff. So anyway, hi! Sad vibe. Is everything okay? Yeah, no, it's fine. I just tried to find one that's a story music. If it's a little sad, let me change it. Hang on, give me a second. If it's a little sad, let me change it. Hang on. I'm not trying to be sad. I was trying to find storytelling music, and that was the first one that popped up, and I didn't know it was that sad. Hang on, let me change it. Let me change it real quick. I was just testing it. I kind of like the storytelling vibe of that music, but no, don't worry. There's nothing bad. It's just I'm up late, and I wasn't too happy about it, but eh. Let's see if this works. This is a little better. Tell me what you think of this one. We're going to talk for just a minute before I start actually doing what the title says. Because it's been in the making for a long, long time. I've been contemplating ever actually doing a stream like this, and I decided, hey, we're gonna do it. Because why not? I think the music's a little mixer here. Hold on a second. Bring that down a bit. There we go. That should be a little bit better. Yeah, no, let me know if this music's a little better. I was just literally playing the first music that popped up for literally story time music. So if it was a little sad, I had no idea. I really had no idea. Because I don't usually listen to music like this. So, nah, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I'm just concerned about tomorrow, that's all. You can hear a fan in the background. My father is boiling some eggs, and so didn't want to humidify me to absolute hell and back. So, but yes, as the stream does entitle, we're going to be telling a story today that I was writing for the longest time, and I was so scared that no one was going to be interested in listening to the story. I was actually terrified that if I wrote this story, that genuinely no one was going to want to listen to it. I hope I can pull it up. Excuse me. But yeah, I've always wanted to write and at least to tell a story. And I really, really never got that opportunity. Oh, Liberals is here. Why is my space travel music playing? That's not what I wanted. At all, in fact. That's really weird. Was not supposed to play. Yeah, it sounds good. Sorry for the long response. Phone freezes. It's okay. Some dude outside the window, they told me. No, Liberal, you're not fooling me this time, man. Oh, Baker Boy, hi. I thought you were liberal for half a second. The world is healing. God, I hope so. Baker Boy, you're new. I don't think I've seen you around, unless you're... How's your day? My day is fine. Final Destination of Flagstaff, Arizona, that floats 50 feet in the air, is secretly a ship, and all the Flagstaff residents will be flying away. I have family that lives in Flagstaff, so if they were telling me if that was going to happen, I'm pretty sure they would have gotten in contact with me very, very quickly. What's wrong with him? What's wrong with Baker here? Blue Star, hello! Oh my god, we have so many people here today. Holy crap! Hi. It's story night tonight on my channel today. I am actually terrified about this because I've never told this story after writing, because I was so fearful that writing this story was going to just... I'm doing really well. Vegeta lives in Flagstaff with me. That's Vegeta, not Vegeta. Weird. Anyway, no, a long time ago, I wrote a story. Where did it go? And I'm going to attempt tonight, with a lot of struggle, and hopefully if I can find some actually decent, like, background music for it. I'm thinking either lo-fi music or I'm just going to throw in a story track. We're going to listen to me read the story. Because for me, I've always wanted to write a story because my dad has been absolutely incredible with it. Like, he's always been awesome with writing stories. And I really didn't get... Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I never had the insane opportunity to write stories. But when I did write stories, I wrote just kind of the starting half of the story, and then I'd finish it off later. And so the big project that I've been trying to get done for the longest time is finishing this story, and I never finished it properly, I should say. I finished it. Trying to get BGM for this is the hardest thing, because most of the storytelling BGM is only a couple minutes long. So you have to, like, really go digging for long... There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Hang on, let me make sure this isn't copyright real quick. I did a wall backflip? Okay, that sounds pretty cool. I don't know if this is all copyright or not. I don't think it is. But I don't want to trust it. Hey, I just wanted to say hi. You always come on when I have to get some sleep. Now, with the new job, early shifts can be a pain, but one of these days I will be able to have a huge hugs! Hugs! Hugs for all! I'm sorry, Bloopster. I know I come on late. I'm very sorry. I'm back. My phone's been acting dumb since the last 2 live streams. It's okay. Bloopster, it is absolutely amazing to have you come on stream. Hugs for you. I love hugs. Hugs are awesome. I will add that as a chat command here coming up in the near future. God, I need to do that. I need to add that as a chat command. Excuse me. I'm yawning. This is me. This is pre-stream right here. Usually, what I do. This is extremely pre-stream. Searching for background music and crap because, jeez, it's very difficult. It's so good to see you, Blue. Okay, you're back because your phone was glitching. All right, good. I think I already read that though. God, I need like really long BGM, and I don't have anything that's really good. I'm not seeing anything that fits my bill here. If I can find gaming music that isn't just absolute dubstep, I'll be fine with that. Okay, that's just nothing but dubstep. Bass boosted, please no. Cool. Ooh, I'm not reading that one. I almost read that. I am not reading that. Homework songs. This might be what I'm looking for. No, that's all copyrighted music. We ain't doing that. Alright, I'm practically giving up here. Is this Beats for Study or something? Let me check chat. Having Bloopster jump in and just yell, hugs! Oh, this'll work. This'll work just fine. Alright, cool. I found our BGM. There we go. That's a little better. What do you guys think? That good storytelling music? Let me know. By the way, Oa has the same shirt, but yeah, for real this time, night. Hugs, again. Thank you, big hugs for you. Big hugs. I'm so glad Oa has the same shirt as me. That means a lot. Alright, good night, Bloopster. It's so good to see you. Please, for the love of God, get some rest. I have been exhausted for the last several days, and my sleep schedule's already screwed up as is. So I know what it feels like. Go to rest. Seriously, go rest. You're awesome. Alright. So now, with that all being set up officially, we are now going to, for the first time ever, I'm going to minimize my screen so I cannot read chat. And I'm going to throw you guys over there. For the first time ever, I'm doing a dual screen stream. And I will say I am very nervous. I can't tell if my screen is slightly off or what. We're gonna leave it there because I think that's right. Let me check. Let me just go back to full screen real fast. Set that in the middle. Okay, that's better. There we go. Okay, so I can only see chat the same way you guys see chat now. But I want y'all to understand that me reading this story, it has an ending to it, and I've wanted to read this story for a long time. I wanted to publish this story, actually. That was my original goal with it, was to publish it. However, I eventually decided that because of just the faffery that came with it, I wasn't able to publish it. Now, there's only 23 pages at the moment, but the rest of the story is going to build as we go. Because I had it all written down and I remember exactly how I wanted to go. So, this is probably one of the, I want to say, weirder stories I've ever told or wrote. And if you guys do enjoy it, please, for the love of everything, let me know you enjoyed it. Because this took me weeks to write. Like, actual weeks to write. So, if I've done this right, I should be able to read everything. Okay. So, now I can see chat a little bit better. So, are we all ready for this? I will be happy to hear the story. Okay, Cameron, that means a lot to me. So, the story does not have an official title, but the title I was working on is called The Word. And it scares me to actually read this story. It scares me to read this story, but my dad has always been really good at stories, and he helped me write some of this. So, we're going to give it a shot. We're going to see how well this goes. And yes, I am stalling. And yes, I'm completely not ready for this, but here we go. So, we're going to start, obviously, and we're all good stories start with a prologue. Prologue. Many years ago, I lost someone close to me, and ever since they had passed away, I've been traveling the world writing stories about the past of knights in shining armor, to those in the Wild West. But all of that changed the day I got on board a late-night train ride. Chapter 1. So there I was. No, I thought to myself, this is too cliche. I need something more original. It's late. It was super late. I could hear the rain pounding outside. It's pounding out there, I said to myself. I hope I'm not too late for my book signing. I was wearing a long black overcoat with white accents. My hair was in a ponytail, which was as black as my coat. Now boarding on track 1. The flyer. That's my call, I said out loud as I stood up, put away my notebook in my bag, walked over to the platform. Good heavens, the rain is so intense, I'm so glad I'm not driving in this. I said as I boarded. I went and sat in my normal spot, set out my supplies, my notebook, my pens, and a super old computer. As the train left, I started to write more of my upcoming news story. But as I was writing, I saw someone walk in who I swear I know. And yet, it was a mystery to me. It was a woman in a very dark purple cloak. She was wearing a mask that covered the lower half of her face, and the rest was covered by her hood of the cloak. And all I could make out were her eyes as she sat down. For a moment, she looked at me, and her eyes were so violet, they sparkled like the moonlight. But there was so much mystery around her, I couldn't tell who she was. Within seconds, she pulled out a computer, a headset, and set it up. What is she doing? I thought to myself. When, at that moment, she appeared to be talking into the headset as if someone was on the other side. But I couldn't make out what she was saying, because her mask made it impossible to understand her. However, she was speaking very quickly. Moments later, she looked at me, and I quickly went back to writing in my book and continued the news story. But she got up and walked by me and looked at me, and I was in awe at her. She moved down the passenger car as if she wasn't even touching the floor. Who the hell was that? Better yet, what the hell was that? I asked myself. I chose to ignore it though and continued riding into the night. Around midnight, I got up to go to my cabin on board the train. The rain was still pounding down as we flew through the countryside. However, when I arrived at my cabin, the door was wide open. That's odd. I haven't even been here yet, I said as I stepped inside the cabin. As I stepped into the cabin, there was the strange woman. She held herself up with such pride, even while sitting in the small, dark cabin. Hello there, she said in a soft, mysterious voice. What's your name? My name? Shit. My name is Alexander. But before I get off track, I'll talk about the woman. Her hair was similar to her eyes, and it was smoother than glass, or so it seemed. It came to a point just past her shoulders and moved with the slightest effort. May I ask why you're in my bunk room? She asked softly. Your bunk, I replied. I booked this room. Her mask moved as if she was smirking. Well then, I guess we must share a room. After all, there are 2 beds, she retorted back smugly. At that point, I could not fight her. She was right. So I set my things up on the farthest bed. May I ask you something? I said to the woman in my room. If you want to know who I am both human and not human at all. Her voice, though it was soft, carried with it such power. And yet, what did she mean by not human? How did you know that's what I was going to ask? I said, shocked. You're not the only person that must turn their head when I walk by. I'm a queen, but not of this world. Not of this world? What the hell is that supposed to mean? So is she from, not Earth or something? Or is she a mystical creature? Little did I know that we soon would live out one of the scariest, weirdest, and most confusing events that ever happened to me on a train. And something that we've never seen before. So what's your profession? I asked the woman, asking my job without asking my name. My, you are a sly one, aren't you? She said tauntingly. Her name? Shit, she's right. I haven't even asked her name, and I'm talking to her like I've known her for years. But how's that even possible? Well, what is your name? I said with a slight bit of anger in my voice. Now, Alexander. That's no way to speak to a woman, is it? Now she's scaring me. How does she know my name? It seemed to me that even though we knew nothing about each other, we talked to each other as if I had known her for years. But I had no clue who she was or where I'd seen her from before. When we heard a noise and stopped to listen, but it was just a door opening. Have we met before? You seem so familiar to me, I said, restarting our conversation. We haven't, she said, turning around in her chair. Now her fingers could be seen through her cloak. She was thin around her waist, and yet she appeared to have hidden strength in her arms and legs. She looked shorter than me. So this woman and I kept talking back and forth. Then in a moment we heard somebody fall onto the ground in the other room. Within moments, someone ran past our room and slammed the door. Well, said the woman, that man's in a hurry. That didn't sound good, I replied. As I stood up, a guard flung our door to our cabin wide open and started scanning the room. Can I help you? Said the woman. The person in the other bunk has been murdered. We think the killer is no longer on board the train and has jumped off randomly, the guard said furiously. And this is where our story truly begins. The mysterious woman, who I have only just known a few minutes ago, gets up and walks over to the other room. Confused, I follow her. In the room, there was a man lying on the floor, dead. Yet there was no sign of struggle, no stab wounds, and no weapon to be seen. We didn't even hear a gun go off. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "Do we know how he died?" said the odd woman, now crouching near the dead body. "Yes, he has been dead for less than a minute," the guard replied, seeming shocked at the fact that the murder happened on board and not a single person heard it, nor was there even a scream or sign of struggle. The woman and I were the only ones nearby who even heard the man fall. "Wait a minute," I said to myself. "If we're the only ones that heard it, then who reported it?" "Who reported the murder?" the woman said softly, as if reading my mind right then and there. "Some gentleman was running through the car frantic, and we tried to calm him down, but he just kept saying, 'I heard it, I know I did,' and then he fainted." Fainted? None of this makes sense. As it started to feel more and more odd and confusing, this mystery woman, whom I've only just met, didn't help. "Do we know who the man is?" she said with a hint of authority in her voice. The guard was taken back, as if not expecting this. "I wish it was an animation, Cameron." "No," the guard replied. "Just some random businessman for all we know." It seems to me at this time absolutely nothing was adding up. Then again, I was only a writer at the time. Within a few hours, the police arrived on the train, and everyone on board was being questioned, except for the woman. It's as if they couldn't see her, or they knew something I didn't. It was at that moment two cops moved the body. One of them said something strange. "You know what's odd?" he said to his partner. "No, what?" his partner replied. There was a glass vial in the room," he said, confused. "Like what, poison?" said his partner. But by that point, they had gotten into the ambulance and shut the door, and they were out of my earshot. After the officers finished questioning the passengers, one of the officers approached me and looked upset. "What's wrong, officer?" I asked calmly. "Are you this author?" he asked, holding up a book. In his hand was one of the books titled "A Man with No Hands," one of my greatest works. "Why, yes I am," I replied happily. "Are you a fan of my work?" "Yes," he said, smiling. "However, we need you to come down to the station and bring your friend with you." At that moment, he gestured to the woman in the violet cloak, who was still standing, wearing the black cloth mask over her mouth and nose. "Oh," I said, no, without worried. "Sure, but why do you need her?" Without missing a beat, he whispers to me, "That's a famous online creator. She's known throughout the world, and yet no one knows what she looks like or even her name." At this point, I was astonished. "What about her eyes?" I asked, at a complete loss for words. "She's never even shown them on camera. We don't even know if she's even responsible for the killing or not." The cops had enough. Were nice enough not to handcuff us, or the woman as we drove to the station. By now the rain had stopped, and it was early in the morning, so the sun was just about to come over the mountains. And the woman seemed nervous. "Why are you scared?" I asked her calmly. "I don't want to be out in the day. There's too many people. I want to stay hidden from the world. I don't like it that much." Her voice had changed from being soft and assertive so fast that it didn't even seem like the same person I was talking to moments ago. "Don't worry," the officer piped up. "We won't let your identity be found out." This seemed to put her at ease, and as the sun came up, she fully covered her face with the heavy cloak. "How will you see?" I asked, confused by her actions. "One does not have to see in order to move forward," she said, her voice back to being soft and gentle. As we pulled into the police station, we drove into the garage from the back of the building, and the police stepped out of the car, and I turned, and I was in awe. The woman had somehow managed to get out of the vehicle, and I didn't even hear her open the door. "How did you do that?" I asked. The odd part was, the police doors were locked from the outside, so there was no conceivable way for her to leave without opening the door from the outside. I guess this scared the cops as much as me, because when they let me out, They were standing scared. She seemed to be scanning the rooms as we walked through to the interrogation rooms of the police station. When she saw them, she stopped and refused to go inside. "Why won't you go in?" the police chief asked. "There's no way out," she replied. "I'm not letting myself get trapped in a room." "Then we shall leave the door open for you." When she walked in, they blocked the door so that it wouldn't close. When she sat down next to me in the room, I realized that she was only a few inches taller than me. Yet, she seemed so short back on the train. The officer began to speak. "So tell me what you remember from the murder." "Well," I started, but I was suddenly cut off. "There was no fight in the other room," said the woman. "Sometime before Alex and I arrived, someone walked into the bunk room, stayed there a few moments, and then left. They came back a while after I and Alex were talking. That's when we heard the thud and the running." She spoke fast and appeared to be hard for the officer to catch everything she seemed to say. "How can you speak so fast and not slip up?" the officer asked. He seemed surprised that she didn't slip up once. "I've had practice," she said, looking towards the door. She seemed like she wanted to run. "So one thing we can't understand is that the autopsy that we found showed nothing that could have caused the death. No poison, nothing of the sort. Not even a stab wound or even a gunshot. So we're sending stuff to the lab for testing." The officer turned to the mirror on the wall, and the sound of two people left from behind it. "So you mean you can't find anything?" I asked. "How can he die? How can someone die? And there's no trace of anything? That's impossible, right?" "May I see the body?" I jumped when the mystery woman spoke again. I almost forgot she was there. The officer looked concerned. "Well, I guess," he said. "However, we have to close the door behind you." He said, worried that would change her mind. "Are there windows?" she asked calmly. "Yes," the officer replied, stuttering. "Just the one, but it hasn't been opened in years." She nods, and she stood up and stared at the officer. "Take me to the room," she said, her voice going from being soft to extremely stern very quickly. Making sure my stream's working. She turned and looked at me. "Alex will come with me. After all, we are friends." I couldn't understand why she'd say that with such a stern voice, though. And so I stood up and followed her, and the officer followed with us. As we walked through the station, all of the police officers were staring at her, as if she wasn't even real, as if it was impossible for her to exist. The woman clenched her cloak as we kept walking, as if she was scared of all the eyes of her on the room. "It'll be over soon," she whispered to herself as we walked. She seemed shorter again, at least by a few inches, but no more than a 4 or 5. As we walked into the room, the woman disappeared. Completely gone. And the window was open. And the chief was shocked. The lights flickered for a moment, and the woman was back in the room, as if she just vanished and reappeared. "You're still loving the story? Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm really glad you're enjoying it. I am reading chat, so I will be responding to chat mid-story. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. This means a lot to me." Wait, walked in the room, the lights flickered for a moment. The woman was standing back at the body, next to the body, scanning it, as if there was something there we all couldn't see. Then I noticed something strange. Something that didn't make sense, even though the situation didn't make sense at all. There was a mark forming on the man's neck. It wasn't a bruise, but more like an injection point. "Hang on," I said, stunned. "What's that mark?" And I pointed at it. Suddenly, a scientist walked into the room. Looking shocked, He took a sample of the skin near the mark, and the doctor looked at it, and the scientist looked at me, and smiled. I know this isn't the right thing to ask, sir, the scientist said, but are you Alexander? He said it quite nervously, and with a smile, I replied, yes, I am. The doctor ran off, and the scientist ran off, and both came back with a book. Would you sign this for me? They asked simultaneously. I smiled and took each book from their hands. Both of them read, A Year When the Sun Didn't Shine, the first book I ever wrote. Why, of course I will, I said, smiling, and I signed each of the first pages of each book. And then it hit me. The mark on the man's neck. The fact that the tests came back all negative. And the fact that this happened on board a train. And the color of the wound. Was I living in my own story? Then, the door got kicked down of the office. An FBI agent walked into the room, and the woman who had been with me this entire time cowered behind me, as if to hide from this man. What's wrong? I asked her, completely shocked by her actions. Without warning, she grabbed a hold of my trench coat, tightly, as if looking for protection. She began to shake and shiver in fear. I'm here to take the man away, the agent said, looking through the room. He looked at me and smiled. But he didn't smile very friendly. Well, 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 if it isn't Alexander, the mystery author himself. He said it with a tauntingness in his voice. Yeah, I said back to him. So what's wrong with me being here? Nothing, he replied. My son loves your book, watching the time go by. A very odd twist ending. Well, thanks, I said, trying to ignore the fact that the woman was almost pulling me backwards with how hard she was tugging on my coat. Well, I must be going, said the agent, and he helped the scientist wheel the body of the man out the door. The moment he walked away, the woman let go. Forgive me, she said softly. I just don't trust the government. Or anyone, for that matter. But she seemed to be taken back and rather annoyed by this. Then why don't you feel that way around us? He asked. You present nothing that fears me, makes me scared. And your presence isn't meant to scare. It's meant to make people feel safe, right? And there was fear in her voice, though I'm assuming she was trying to hide it. That's right, replied the chief. We weren't as threatening as the FBI, or anybody else for that matter. A woman stepped out from behind me and continued to look at the now opened window. I could close that window, now since we are about to leave, she said. Now hold on, I said, being taken back. Has no one seen what I've seen? No one putting the puzzle pieces together here? Well, said the chief, we've got no evidence. We've got no reason for the killing. And we have no clue what's going on, because they took the samples with them. We need to track not what was in the man's bloodstream, but we need to track where the bruising was on his skin, I blurted out. The elements have to have settled into his skin and the bruise mark after death. The woman, the chief, the scientist, and doctor looked at me like I was insane. What are you talking about? The doctor asked. Just trust me, I said. Before I could finish, I looked at the clock on the wall. Shit! I yelled out without a second thought. I'm gonna be late for my book signing! I bolted out of the door with the woman following suit. Where are you going? She asked, trying to keep up. There's a city just a few miles from here. I was supposed to be there today for a book signing for my newest book, and now I'll be late. I raced up to the officer that had brought us into the station. Can you give me a ride to Metroville? I said, winded. Of course, he replied, running for the garage. He seemed excited that he was taking me to the city. The moment he and I got there, the woman was already sitting in the back of the car. Hurry, she replied with a strong voice. If this is so important to you, why move so slow? Dazed and confused, I got into the car. Within moments, we were racing down the highway. It was only a 15-mile drive away, and the conversation and the convention was starting in 20 minutes. So I was nervous and worried that it was going to be a flop. Suddenly, the woman reached out her hand, and I took it, and my anxiety went away. How did you? I asked. I was about to ask, when the woman was now seeming even more in fear and trying to hide in the corner of the back of the vehicle. Don't ask, she said angrily. Her voice was super sharp now and extremely stern, as if now she was nervous about what was going on. We pulled up to the venue with only minutes to spare. We waited for the cop to open the back door, but instead, the woman opened the back door, again confusing me on how she got out the first time. I'm gonna sneeze here, hold on. There we go. Alright, I'm good. Gamble. Oh, hey, Sound In! Welcome to the story. As we rushed in, hundreds of thousands of people were staring. And they were cheering and yelling as I ran to the table, lined up with authors. And I sat down, and the woman sat next to me. The moment she sat down, she threw her cloak as far over her face as she could, just like back at the station. The book signing was like any other book signing I've done. That was until I saw a book that looked way too familiar to me. A young woman with blonde hair walked up to the table with a huge smile on her face. The book she sat down was titled The Unknown Killer. The most twisted book I have ever written. I was so scared of publishing it because I thought it would get taken down or worse. The way that the killer hid his victims in the book was so complex that it took me months to think of the ending. Where did you get this? I asked, surprised. I thought I had never published it. Only just recently, she said, at the local bookstore. I don't want any spoilers, but I've read your books since high school. Nothing was making sense. High schools don't carry my books. And I signed the last of the books and left the convention. What's wrong? The woman asked, following right behind me. I think, I said, completely baffled. The Story of the Mysterious Girl? I actually like that title. I might change the title of this. I think, I said, absolutely stunned. I think the person who killed the businessman on the train is a fan of my works. How do you know that for sure? She asked, completely confused. Because, I replied, this murder has an unknown killer. She looked at me with her eyes of violet, and she was absolutely confused. That's impossible, she said with her voice as soft as it can be. I thought you said all your books were fiction. They are, I said, walking to the local diner with her. That doesn't mean parts of them aren't true. As we walked in, one of the waitresses walked up to the two of us. Oh my gosh, she said with absolute delight. You're Alexander. She turned to the woman next to me. And you must be that streamer. I saw that she was holding in one hand a checkbook, and in the other, she was holding one of my books. It is an honor to meet you in person, she said with such joy to the woman. I'm glad to meet you. However, I ask you not to make a scene. I don't want to make one myself. The woman said softly. The waitress nodded politely and brought us to the farthest table in the diner. It's impossible, I said to myself. All the elements in my book that are used to create the poisons aren't real. In fact, none of the elements on Earth should even exist. What are you talking about? The woman asked, confused. In one of my books, the killer creates a drug that is so potent that a microscopic dose can end someone's life instantly. It leaves absolutely no mark until well after the person has expired. It's completely untraceable. So, like a super weapon, the woman said, reading the menu. Not quite, I replied, pulling out an old notebook from my bag. I dusted it off. I flipped through the notes until I found the right page I was looking for. The only way to trace it is not with the test for drugs or anything of the sort, but to test for metals. Metals? She replied. Before she could finish her sentence, the waitress walked over with the notepad again, ready to take our orders for the diner. I'll have an iced tea, I said nicely. The woman said calmly, I'll just have a water. Right away, she said as she walked off. Walking off, I continued to read the old dusty notes. And every note from every story that I had ever written was in this book. Or at least, my older stories, that is. The problem was, I wrote at least 3 trilogy stories using the exact same idea. Maybe I can help. The woman, who I'd only known for, at this point, about 12 hours, took a look at my notebook and began to read through it. Waitress came back and handed us our tea and our water. And she noticed the notebook on the table. Are you working together? She asked, sounding stunned. Well, no, but at the same time, yes, I said. But when I looked across the table, the mysterious woman seemed very pissed off at me, as if I had just spoken for her in a way that wasn't fair. And her glare, for some unknown reason, made me break out in a cold sweat. What will you be having? Said the waitress. Before I could even open my mouth, the woman began to speak. He will have the usual, and I will try it as well. Her voice was still soft, yet she was much more angry at me now. All right, said the waitress, and she sauntered away. What was that for? I asked her. You haven't noticed yet, have you? She said, sounding very upset. What do you mean? I replied. I've been independent for years. What makes you think I can't speak for myself? She said. Her anger was justified, but I knew we needed to get back to work. Look, I apologize, I said, but there's a person who's dead, and without me having a part to play in it, I think I might have had a part to play in it without knowing. My voice of reason didn't seem to blow things over completely, but we continued to go back to work. Alexander! I looked behind me, and 2 officers had entered the building and were standing over us. Yes, I replied. Can you settle a debate between us? They asked politely. I said, sure, but what is it? I'm not sure if I can help if it's a personal matter. In your book, A Man with No Hands, did the man build hands to create the weapon? Or did he have someone else build them? Is that why there's no fingerprints on the weapon? I was sitting there lost. Why has everyone been caring about what my books are these days? Especially the ones about murder. A Man with No Hands, The Unknown Killer, Watching the Time Go By, and A Year with the Sun Didn't Shine? All had killers where they made their weapon poison, or even an untraceable metal. You're right, I replied, stunned. He had no hands, so he had someone craft them for him. That's when the light bulb went off in my head. Are you guys all working on that case that was from the train a couple of hours ago? The woman didn't seem to understand why I'd asked us. Yeah, we are, they both replied. Did the man have any fingerprints anywhere on him? I asked, trying to sound like I wasn't insane. Well, no, they said. We couldn't find any anywhere. Damn, I thought to myself. Honestly, that didn't help at all. Whether the man who did it was wearing gloves... Wait, could he have had no hands? This might be more than one story, I said to the woman. It's not, she said without missing a beat. Taken back by this, I replied, how can you be sure of this? Because you said it yourself, she said, holding the dusty notebook and pointing to one of the lines. Only one element could have done it. Excuse me. Who's all in chat right now? Oh, Batcrest, you're here. Hi. Excuse me, I need to take a bite. My bad. The woman and I kept looking through the old notebooks, and the waitress brought us our food. Thank you, said the woman from across the table. It was at this moment I started to get tired of calling her the woman. I needed her name. I just have to ask, I said, looking across to her from the table. Her head came out of the notebooks, but only for a moment. As I've said before, she said calmly, I will never tell you my name until the time is right. What do you mean by that? I said, confused. Time, she said softly, is limited for most people. However, if you've lived for as long as I have, time is a constant. What is she saying? She isn't making any sense. Then I found it. In one of my very first books, The Mortal Code. In my opinion, it was never the best book. However, the tactics of the killer matched the way the murder happened on board the train. We need to get to the station, I said, getting up. You haven't even touched your food, said the waitress, concerned. I'll take mine to go, I retorted. I have a murder to solve. What do you mean? Said the woman. I said the waitress. What do you mean, replied the woman. Follow me, I said. We ran down to the nearest police station and I bolted aside. Can I help you, said the officer. I'd like to help you with a case, I said, sounding completely insane. I'll talk to the chief and he'll be down in a moment, said the officer. He wasn't taking me seriously. What are you doing? Said the woman, acting concerned, now cowering behind me again. The books. My books. All of my books. They'll help us solve this case. We need them. And we're meant to follow each of them in order to solve this. I sounded crazy. However, that moment the chief walked into the room. Can I help you, Alex? He asked. I stood there and spoke swiftly. We must run a test on the skin sample that we stole from the man if there's any metals. What are you talking about? He said, looking lost. Trust me, I replied. I don't have to trust you on anything, said the chief. Then the woman spoke with very large amounts of authority. Trust him, said the woman. If you can trust me and you've never seen my face, then you can trust him. And she was right. If they know her, without even knowing who she really is, they could trust a simple artist, right? Well, the chief nodded and walked over to the scientist. Run every test we have to trace metals on the victim, he said. Right away, said the scientist, rushing into the lab. Now you listen here, you two, the chief said, turning and sounding very annoyed. If either of you know how this works, well then, maybe Alexander knows it more than you, woman. But This is real life. This isn't a storybook where you can just write the answer. So stay out of this case. And the chief walked away. That was rude, the woman replied. We're only trying to help. What do you... I know, I replied. Maybe we'll have to do this on our own. How's that possible? She asked again. I mean... I retorted to her. We'll have to become our own detectives. After we left, we snuck around the back of the station to eavesdrop on the chief and the scientists because their office happened to be on the back of the building and a window was open. That's impossible, the scientist replied to the chief. That's impossible. There's no way it could have happened. Calm down, said the chief. Let me see the results. We heard the sound of paper fluttering between the two of them. And it seems that he started to read the paper because he became very stern and scared. We need to cover this up, said the chief to the scientist. We need real evidence, not something that's fake or fabricated. We need something real. The scientist clearly hesitated for a moment, but we saw him walk out the back of the door. We hid alongside the wall, and we watched the chief throw away the test results and go back inside. We need that test, I whispered. I'll grab it, said the woman. And without trying to stop her, she walked over and grabbed the piece of paper out of the trash. And she didn't even make a sound walking through the grass. And she walked back and she opened up the crinkled piece of paper. There were percentages on the piece of paper that told us exactly what was in whatever they just tested. It was 10% deadly nightshade, 20% mercury, but there was an error that took up 70% of the test. 70% is an error, she said, looking confused. What's the error? I looked at her. It's called walking death. It was a poison that was made from elements that are man-made. That's the thing. There's no real name for it, nor does it actually exist. Which makes it, before I could finish my sentence, she replied, an unknown killer? I said correct. The error is what can't be traced because it's not real. So then, how is it being traced as an error? And there's only one way to find the killer, and it's by searching for the elements of the base, right? Correct, I said, but we'll have to go back to my place. And we'll need a car. So the woman and I took off. However, we didn't know that someone had overheard us and was now planning to add, or trying to add, 2 more names to the list of unknown murders. We ran to the nearest rental shop and took the greatest car we could find and took off. So where do you live? The woman asked as we drove down the highway. Why don't you tell me where you live? Then I'll tell you where I live. I thought this would give me a clue on the woman. Who she was, what was going on. Hell, even if she was human in the first place. I was getting quite tired of the mystery. That's the reason I asked. I didn't get the answer I was looking for. I live hundreds of miles away from this place, she said, staring out of the passenger window. I'm considered young for where I'm from, and I'm the last of my kind. What? I replied, last of your kind? Okay, so this didn't help me in the slightest. So I had to ask another question. How old are you? I asked, changing lanes to drive down the smaller roads. I am what you would call a youthful soul, she replied softly. As if she knew what I was trying to do, she was beating around the bush. You are asking questions I wish not to answer. I'm a mystery, and that is how I want it to stay. I wish you would respect that. I was going to say something when I had to swerve to hit avoid an oncoming car. "What the hell was that?" the woman asked. "I believe someone doesn't want me to get to my house," I said jokingly. And then I had to avoid another car coming down the road. "Where's your house?" she asked softly, looking around as if she had never seen such a tiny town. "My house is just on the outside of this tiny town, out in the country. I built it myself 10 years ago," I replied, smiling. We turned onto a gravel road and drove around 3 minutes until we came into a clearing, and standing in the clearing was a large 3-story log mansion. I built the house with my late wife, and I believe it was the first time Mystery Woman had ever seen something like this, because her eyes were wide with surprise and shock and awe. I got out and ran to my house. "Hurry," I said. "We need to get to my office." She seemed to snap out of the trance she was in staring at the house and followed me inside. It was a 3-story house with a balcony on the second floor that overlooked the entranceway and the living room. I ran upstairs to my office and pulled out a piece of paper and began to write stuff down of what we already knew. "What's the plan?" she asked, sitting next to me. "First, we're going to write down some ideas. You're going to rest," I said, looking at her. "It's almost been 2 days, and I haven't seen you take a nap." She nodded and walked downstairs, and I heard my couch groan as she lay down, but I kept working deep into the night. The next morning, I woke up in my office. I must have passed out, because I don't remember falling asleep. I thought to myself as I got up from my desk and walked downstairs, and I saw the woman fast asleep. She was completely covered with her cloak, and I still can't figure out why she's helping me, or even who she is. Suddenly, there was a knock at my door, and I opened it, and it was the police chief. "Chief," I said, "how can I help you?" "Alexander," he said, "I need your help." This baffled me. Why would he be wanting my help when just the other day he said to stay out of it? "With what?" I asked cheekily. "This case. Every way my detectives have looked at it, the tracks go cold. We have no answers." He was starting to sound defensive towards himself. "Well," I said, "if you want my help, you need to promise me one thing." He rolled his eyes at me. "And what would that be?" "The woman works with me," I said, turning and pointing to the sleeping woman. "The streamer?" he said, shocked. "How's she gonna help you? Because," I said, cutting him off, "she trusts me. And if I can trust her, then so can you." The police chief rolled his eyes and said, "I'm gonna wait for you outside," and closed the door. So I walked over and tried to wake her up. "Hey," I said calmly, "we gotta get moving." She groaned and got up, with her cloak slipping over her head and down her back, so her whole body and face were covered, as if she didn't even try to put the sleeves on. "Let's go," she said with the softest morning voice I've ever heard. I watched this woman practically float over to the door and get into the rental car. "First of all," I said to the chief as we were walking to the vehicles, "we need to track down where all of the elements came from. Someone knows the right amount of each piece of metallics to use." I got into the rental and followed the chief back to Metroville. Once the woman and I walked into the station was filled with whispers. Some of the officers pointed behind me, and I was confused. That was until I looked behind me, and the woman was standing in her room with her cloak off of her head. Her hair was as purple and as vibrant as her eye color, and it was shining in the morning sunlight. When everyone saw her, she ran. "Wait!" I said, bolting after her. "What's going on?" She didn't say a word till she got out of my sight and yelled, "Go away." When I turned the corner to try and chase after her, it's as if she jumped or did a no-clip, because she was gone. "What's going on?" the chief yelled from the station. I said, "She's gone," silently. "What?" said the chief. I turned around and yelled, "She's gone." "Odd," said the chief. "Let's go to the lab so we can, you can get to work." I shrugged this off and walked to the station and headed for the lab. "I worked best alone," I said, shutting the door, and I turned to face the dark lab, and all I could see was the computer screens and a few machine panels that shone in the dark light of the room. But when I turned the lab light on, I had to hold back a scream. Because there, in the room, was the woman, and the lab had no windows. "What the hell?" I said, turning to her, and obviously trying not to alarm the chief. I did my best not to yell. "You never speak of what you saw," she said. "You'll not understand what or who I am, and they'll never remember it either." "I have several questions," I said. "How is that even possible?" "I have unearthly abilities," she began. "And to them, I shouldn't even exist. And so, I'm gonna keep it that way. Hey gamer man, I'm a friend of Cameron's, and I just did my first live stream on YouTube, and it was a total disaster." "Oh my god!" Hang on, we're pausing the story for just a second. We're pausing the story. "It was a disaster? Tell me about it." We're gonna pause this for just a second, because I want to help out here. What happened, Voltrex? What happened, man? Talk to me. I can't just let that come into my stream, and I can't not worry about it. Tell me what happened, bud. I want to help you out. What can I do to help? Because I genuinely want to help you out. Because if that did occur, man, I want to help you. Let me find your channel here real fast. It'll take me a minute, so bear with me, please. Yeah, my stream's not going to do great. Vortex Gaming. I hope this is the right one. No, that's not it. It wouldn't load at all, and no matter what I tried, it was so slow. And so I guess it was just the way I had it set up. And I mean it when it's my first. Okay. If you would be kind enough to give me your... Wait, I can just go to Cameron's stream, because he was talking about you in a stream, wasn't he? He was talking about you in a stream, I remember that. Let me... I want to try and help you. That's my goal right now. If you can like give me access to your channel or like tell me where I'm supposed to look. Yeah, this is my friend who likes my Star Trek game. Okay, cool. So the first bit of advice I'd get for you is that if your setup isn't working, if it's like lagging or causing delays, the best thing that you can do would be to probably take... Right now, me and Cameron are in a voice call on Discord, and we are watching your stream. Oh, bless! You guys are on Discord. Alright, so I'm going to try and help you guys out I'm going to try and help both of you out, or at least Voltrex out here real fast.
Voltrax, if you want to drop me a follow, by all means go and do so. I won't tell you not to. I won't force you to either. So if you're using Streamlabs like me, because that's what my service is that I use, it does take a lot of power. And we'll get back to the story in just a second. But first streams are never the most successful. They can be successful. It depends on what happens in order for it to go on. So here's what we're going to do. I will follow you. Why, thank you. Hey, you! It's very kind of you. So here's the gist. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to try and help you out here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what streaming service you're using. This is a complete 180 turn from me telling a story. So if you want to see the story later, when the video comes out, when this is a time lapse, I'll put timestamps in the stream. So first things first. What streaming service what are you using to stream? That is my question. Like what website are you using? Because I'm using Streamlabs. I'm pretty sure there's other ones that are available. If I'm not mistaken, there should be several that are able to be used. I'm trying to think. If you're using... Hang on, I'm going to full screen this for right now. If you're using... what's it called? If you're using... What the hell am I thinking of? I'm thinking of something. If you use... Streamlabs, it's going to work a little differently than, say, StreamYard, which StreamYard is a free service that you can use, I think, through a web browser. I'm using something from the Microsoft Store called Client for Streaming. There's your issue. You're using basic. So it's not bad. Okay, I will say this, it's not bad. Your choice of streaming service is not horrible. I used to use it. I tried using it for the longest time. It was not horrendous. It was never bad. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad. Which brings me to the point that I'm trying to make of there's two streaming platforms I would use for streaming. If you wanted to actually try and do a genuinely proper stream. I've got something stuck in my nose. Hang on a second. I'm going to be a little disgusting for a little. So, if your computer is a really good computer, like I mean really good, and you have really good Wi-Fi, I'd suggest using Streamlabs. Now, Streamlabs comes with a bunch of other really cool features, like it comes with a merch store, it comes with notifications, it comes with these awesome chat boxes, it comes with these notification boxes right here, it comes with your chat commands, like I've had people use chat commands before. It comes with all that kind of stuff. Now, on occasion, how do I get Streamlabs? Because I'm streaming off a laptop. Okay, so you're streaming off a laptop. That is another thing. Nice, you're helping him out. He is so young in the YouTube world. He reminds me of when you first started out on YouTube. Yeah, it's been minutes since I've been on YouTube. So, if you have a search engine, you want to search up Streamlabs online. You'll have to make an account. You'll have to link your stream account with Streamlabs. There's a couple other steps in there too. Like with me, I have a merch store, which you can go check out too. Kind of see what I've done for setup for my streams and what have you. But what you have to understand is that when you do streams, you have to set everything aside that you're going to do for that day while you're streaming. Because if you stream and then you try and do stuff, like for example what I'm trying to do right now, which is work on streaming and set up another stream notification, it's really, really different. Okay, thank you so much. I will go find it. Yes, please go find it. Because if you manage to find it, your life will get a little easier. Now, if you don't want to do the whole downloading process, and you don't want to go through the extra efforts of Streamlabs because it is a little complicated, I would suggest going to something called StreamYard. It has a duck logo. It's what I used to use originally for streams. It tends to be a little bit easier for newcomers because it's very simplified. It's very, very simplified. It's literally just you select your service, you select a title, you build a description, and you go. It's very, very simple. And honestly, it's not that bad. It's pretty useful. And I've found that, for me, it's the more for beginners than anything else. Because if you're getting into streaming and you don't have the computer capacity, I'm downloading it right now. Thank you again. You're absolutely welcome. Remember, be very careful when you set up Streamlabs. It can get a little frustrating. If you do start streaming and you want more features, Cameron has my Discord. Message me on Discord and I will try and help you out a little more, okay? I'm not the greatest at it, so I'm not going to be the best when it comes to giving advice. But if you have more questions, don't hesitate to hit me up on Discord. I will be more than willing to let you chat with me through Discord. But yes, if you have more questions while this stream is going on, please don't hesitate to ask. At this very second, I would like to continue our story because I need to remember where we are. How is possible? And those are the abilities. Alright. Shall we continue? Or do you have more questions? I don't want to continue if you have more questions. Because if you still have more questions, I'd still like to help you out before I continue along. I don't like just shoving people to the side. I feel like it's a little rude. But please let me know if you have any more questions. I'll do my best. I will take a moment to stop and answer questions. I have unearthly abilities. I should not exist, and I like to keep it that way. That, however, didn't help. I don't have time to question what she meant. Because I honestly don't know what she meant. I had to help the wife. Who the... Hello? Sorry about that, everybody. I just got a phone call from a good friend of mine. Yeah, he's trying so hard, plus I motivate him to keep doing what he's doing. Yes! Motivation is key. Motivation is 100% key. If you don't have motivation to get stuff going, you're gonna hit a wall, and it's not gonna end well. But yes, motivation is critical. Never give up on your motivation, ever. I'm so glad I caught that copyright music, though. I was so scared of that copyright music. Okay. Yeah, no. Motivation is key. The woman walked over to the computers. Take the metal samples they took and run it through the computer, I said to the woman. It should give us the base elements of what it's made of. She nodded and began to work on the computers. At that exact moment, the chief came into the room frantic. What's going on? I asked, confused. There's another murder, he said. Would you like to come take a look at the scene? Yeah, of course. I need more evidence anyway. I replied, turning to the woman. Follow me, please. Let the computer do its job. The woman stood up and nodded. but she had a look on her face like she didn't like me bossing her around. And she covered her face once again with her cloak and her cloth mask. She seemed to favor that outfit. We arrived on the scene, and I stopped dead in my tracks. There was another man on the ground, dead. There was gray all up and down his neck, and his face was colorless. And what caught my eye was a glass syringe next to him with a silver liquid. I immediately yelled at the detectives, "Don't touch the syringe! It will kill you." However, the woman seemed to completely ignore me, defying my very request, and picked it up without having any repercussions. I was baffled by this. "Now," I said, talking to the chief, "we need to take the body and find out who it is. I can't be sure, but it may be another businessman." The chief looked at me with absolute disdain. How am I allowed to give him orders? How can someone like this kill a person? The woman said, absolutely mesmerized by the silver element. "It flows to the brain similar to caffeine in a soda or coffee, and the brain absorbs it thinking that it's that very item, and it instantly destroys your nervous system." I said, "Walk into the cops and detectives who were working on it." I pulled out a small pocket notebook and wrote a few things down. "What are you writing?" the woman asked. "An idea," I replied. At the moment, a man walked up who was not a detective, an officer, or a scientist. "Excuse me," he said. "Is this a bad time for you to sign the book, Mr. Jones?" "Not at all," I said, weirded out that he knows my last name. And I took the book and stopped before I could sign it, because it was the titled Unknown Killer. "What is your name?" I asked him. "Mark," he replied. "May I ask why that's important?" "Just wanted to know to personalize the book," I said, handing the book back after signing it, and he walked away. I secretly turned to one of the detectives. "Hey, who questioned that guy over there?" I pointed over at Mark. "He just handed me something that I'm sure has something to do with this case." The officer nodded and went to question Mark. "Why did you send that random man to be questioned?" the officer said, getting pissed off with me. "The man or woman we are looking for has the book titled The Unknown Killer. The answers are in that book. If we find the book, at least the right book, we find the killer, and we can end this case faster," I replied. "There are at least 1,000 books out there that you've created, not counting the online books. We're never gonna track it down now," the chief said, storming away. "The thing is," I said, we can if we follow the very books I've written." "Okay, I set it up. Thank you so much. I'm going to go live again momentarily using Streamlabs. I wish you the best of luck. I really do. If it goes well, please let me know. If it doesn't go well, please let me know. And if you get a little lost, I'm more than willing to do a tutorial for you. Don't worry." So, as the detectives and I were searching the scene thoroughly as possible, trying to gather as much information as we could, the woman seemed to be staring the syringe that she was holding with 2 fingers. "Why are you just staring at it?" I said as she came over to me. "I'm looking for fingerprints," she said softly. "If the killer slipped up, we may have him." I couldn't believe her. "You can't find fingerprints without a UV light or a little dusty thing." "Thank you. By the way, I'll be playing Cameron's Star Trek game on the stream. If I can find your channel, I'll try and stop by later." And yet, she kept staring at the syringe. I walked away and started to pace, trying to remember how to solve the case in the story. How on earth did this person manage to create a fake element in the real world, I thought to myself. Nothing's making sense. There's elements existing, 2 people are dead. They're using the same way of they were killed in the same way, along with this woman who I've never met, and yet I'm still working with her. I don't even know I don't even know why, but this whole time, I swear I know who she is. I should know her name, but I don't. I found one, the woman said calmly. I bolted over to the syringe and looked, however, I couldn't see what she was talking about. Yet somehow I wanted to believe her. I need a UV light over here, I said, and a detective ran over and shined the light on the syringe. And lo and behold, there was a set of fingerprints. Just barely on the plunger. They were there. Quick, I said, run this through the criminal database. We need to find out who this is, and if he or she can be arrested. The detective nodded and ran off with the prints into the computer, and I looked at the woman, and I must have seemed shocked, because she chuckled slightly. Do you not believe me? She asked. You know I'm not the same as you, right? Yes, I said, stuttering. As you said, I am not human, and I'm human. I'm shocked by how you know these things. I knew she was smiling under the mask because it moved slightly upward. One day, Alexander, you'll understand, she said. At that moment, the detective came over, looking pissed. Ran the prints 20 times with the speed search. It says not in the system. How the hell are we going to find this person? This guy must be getting out of our hands. Completely avoiding the fact he assumed the gender of this person without ever meeting them. All we need to do is check every database, I said. You will have to find even a 10% match, I said. We will find them. I began to understand that I was up until this point. I had truly never worked on a case like this. I'd never understood a case like this in the real world, and I was glad to be in a real case for once. It might help me in story writing. You know, said the woman, why can't we just track the elements where it was made? You can try, I said. However, it might be hard considering the elements aren't supposed to exist in the first place. So whoever made this, they knew what they were doing. I wasn't wrong, because we looked through every database and couldn't find a single person to match the fingerprint. So I had no choice. I had to go back to the police station and reverse engineer the element. It was the only way to do it. Until I remembered something. Are there any chemical plants nearby, laboratories that aren't attached to the police station, or science labs? I said to the chief. Yeah, he said. There's just one outside of town, but it's a privately owned building. There's only a few people in the town that have access to it. Bingo, I said, pointing at him. We find the people that have access to the facility, we find our killer. I realize now that sounds a little stupid. If anyone is missing a keycard, we can track it down, right? This is perfect, I said to myself. If the killer used the plants and the chemicals at this facility, then we can track who it was by checking the login history of the card. However, if they didn't log in with that card, then it was already a cold case. And following the wrong story and the wrong people at the wrong time. Are you okay? I asked the woman. She seemed to be leaning against a wall, and she may have not slept well. Yes, I'm fine, she said. It's just been a long day, and I've lived a long time. Now she's worrying me, but I didn't have time for that. Every second I wasted, we were letting the man run away and create another element, or woman, who's the killer. I turned to the detectives and spoke very quickly. Search the town. Whoever has a keycard, you need to question them on where the keycard was, and if they've lost it, and have they reported the loss. All of the detectives nodded quickly and shot to the town, and the chief was getting more and more pissed off at me. "How dare you harass the town folks," he yelled at me. "This is nothing. They are not worth deserving this treatment from us." He was shouting at me, and yeah, I understood where he was coming from, but this is a matter of life and death we're talking about here. We don't have time for public relations. The chief, woman, and I started to head in the direction of the lab in an unmarked police cruiser. We didn't want to draw attention to ourselves as best as we could. Once we crested the hill, we held our breath and gasped. Because the plant was in flames. "No!" I said to myself. "The plant, any evidence we had, our trail, it's gone. We've lost." I heard a door slam, and I watched the woman run to the destroyed plant. Once she arrived at the damaged door, she bolted in. "How did she get out? What the hell's going on?" I thought to myself, all of these questions raising elements that I could not answer. The whole building was burnt and shot up, and flames were still coming out of the back of the building. I'm pressing wrong buttons. I'm turning down the BGM a little bit. I got out of the car and ran over to the woman. The police chief followed us as we examined the area. The rubble where we were standing was smoking in random spots, and the building rubble felt like someone didn't want us here because it was all scorched. The back of the building had finally stopped burning. Or the police were helping? No, that's not possible. Why would they have known where to look? And at the same time covered the tracks, you'd think they would have wanted to know where the chemicals came from, right? Whoever's doing this, they don't want the police involved, and they don't want me involved. And what was left of the walls had huge bullet holes in them, and it looked like if I even sneezed in the area, they would fall down. "How could this have happened without us knowing?" the chief said, shocked. "Only a handful of people know where this place even is. How could it have been destroyed?" "It was a break-in," said the woman softly. "At least 4 gunmen and someone else." She had her hand on one of the walls as if she could see into the past. I walked over to the rubble and debris until I saw something shiny under the burnt metal and wood. "Hey! I think I have something. Can someone help me out here?" I said, trying to move the heavy metal without burning myself. The woman walked over and with both hands lifted the huge piece of metal up and picked up another silver syringe. "My word," I said, just completely dumbfounded. "How on earth did they manage that?" "Bioluminescence," said the woman. "That would explain why the others... But why would that explain why the others have been not glowing?" "Right," I said, scratching my head. "Which means I've missed something. How come the syringe was glowing and the others didn't? Something's not adding up here," I thought. "What other things could be inside this poison?" said the woman. "Why would it glow?" "Nothing," I replied. "It can't glow. It's metal. Unless something fell onto the syringe to make it glow. But that would mean we have to clear all of the building debris away to find it." Or, the woman proposed an idea. They could have added the element to make it glow so they can't lose it in the luggage or a bag. She made a valid point. What if this whole time it was there and we just couldn't see it because it was too bright? "Are you done?" the police chief yelled from the car. He seemed rather impatient with me at this point. I took a look at my watch and was shocked. We had been at the burned lab for over an hour. How is that possible? We only just arrived a few minutes ago. I ran over to the officer and began to explain what we had found, and he had looked at me like I had lost my brain cells. So what you're telling me is this thing we're looking for is a sci-fi mysterious thingamawhatsit that just appeared out of thin air? Recently, yes, I replied. That's why I said none of this would make any sense. You're bullshit crazy, Alex. You're absolute batshit crazy, he said, getting into the car. Let's just get out of here before I lose any more brain cells listening to you and this woman. He pointed to the mysterious woman who was holding the syringe this whole time. However, when I turned around, she was gone. And when I looked at the police cruiser, she was in the back seat again. How does she keep doing that? Jumping around like that? It shouldn't be possible. The police chief apparently didn't notice she was back there, because when he turned around, he jumped. How the hell do you do that? He said. Like I've said many times, I can do things that you would never understand. Why do I get the feeling you and Alexander will never believe me when I say that? Her voice, though it was soft, had anger to it. I chose to ignore it, though. She was mad, and if she was mad, and I got into the car, after a few minutes of driving back to town, the chief got out at my house. You two are insane, he said, getting out of his car. If I didn't know any better, I'd think you two were the murderers. And then a smirk came across his face. Maybe you are, he said, running away in his police car. I got a bad feeling about this, said the woman, turning to my house. So do I said, stepping inside. I started to walk up the stairs, and the woman grabbed me by the hand, stopping me. What's the matter? I asked, bewildered. Her eyes shone bright violet and sparkled as if they were a moonlit night. When this is all over, will you do me a favor? She said. Sure, I replied. Name it. I didn't know what she was going to say, so how could I say no? If we manage to find the killer, don't be angry with them. Would you be willing to forgive them? She said calmly. I didn't know what to make of this. Forgive a killer? He's murdered 2 innocent people. Because of me. And I hardly ever get angry. And I'm, let alone, never unforgiving. So for her to ask this seems strange, to say the least. Sure, I said without thinking. Why wouldn't I? It was then I stared into her eyes and I saw fear. I saw pain and I saw loss. She seemed to have lost something close to her. Then, to my amazement, a diamond shining like tear fell from her face and fell onto her mask. I've seen what anger can do, she said. I don't want to lose my only friend in this world, Alexander. This was the first time we had met that she had used my full name. Okay, I said. You have my word. Wait a minute. I paused. Did you just call me a friend? I stopped, and she looked up at me. Yes, she stuttered. I guess I did. She looked up at me. I can call you my friend, right? Yeah, I guess by now, you'd have to be my friend. The moment I said this, her hand tightened around mine. And then she let go and walked away to the couch and got ready for bed. No, I said, walking up the stairs to my office. There is a guest room just a few doors down near my office. You can stay there. If that would be nice. She turned to me just before she took off my cloak. Actually, I would like that, she said. And she followed me upstairs to the small guest room. She stepped inside and shut the door. Thank you, I heard her say. Before the bed creaked, and I walked over to my office to write down more notes from this absolutely strange story we're in. My eyes became heavy after a few minutes of writing, and then I must have fallen asleep and felt something gently poke me. The woman was standing over me without her cloak, holding a cup of coffee. "You've been in here all night," she said softly, still with her mask over her face. "You seem to be writing like there's no tomorrow." "I know," I replied. "With this case, it feels like there is no tomorrow." I got up and looked at the woman, and for the first time since the train, I got a good look at her. Instead, she had a pair of torn jeans on instead of her cloak, and a dark purple shirt, her hair flowing over her shoulders, and yet she still had the mask on. "It's nice to see you out without your cloak for once," I said, sipping on the coffee she handed me. "It's not often I take it off," she replied softly. "I only take it off when I know that no one will judge me." "Why would people judge you?" I said, hoping not to offend her. Then she rolled up her sleeve, and I was amazed. On her arm was a tattoo of a fiery violet phoenix. The wings were folded around its body in a strange way that seemed like it was almost alive. "This is my family crest," she said quietly. "It was given to me when I became of age." "And how old was that?" I said without thinking. Now, Alexander. I've already said I won't tell you my age, because you'll never believe me." I could tell she was smirking again, but I wasn't fully sure. "However," she began, "I will say that I'm much older than you, and that shall be your only clue." "Really?" I said. "A rhyme?" However, before I could finish, I was going to say my phone rang on the desk, so I picked it up. "Hello?" I said. "To whom am I speaking with?" "Call me a fan," said the voice on the end of the line. "I've loved your books, and now I made one a reality. Now I'm going to make two a reality." And the call cut out. "We need you to the police station, now," I said, grabbing my notes and running for the door. "Why?" the woman replied, as she threw her cloak on and put up her hood. "The killer's going to strike again, I fear. But he's not going to do it the same way again." I ran down the stairs, the woman following close behind me. When I flung open the door, the cops were standing outside, guns drawn. "Alexander," the chief said, "we believe you and this woman are responsible for the murders of the three men. Unless you can prove otherwise to me, you are both going to spend a lot of your lives in the slammer." "Hang on a second," I said to myself. 3 men? There's only been 2 murders. Before I could even say a word, the woman spoke. There will be more deaths if you lock Alex away. Can't you see he's the only one who knows how to stop this killer? He wrote the very books they are following. He knows every move they'll make, and he'll know if they slip up. Would you be so blind to your own pride that you will throw away your only hope?" Her voice, though it was soft, carried through the air like a thick fog of authority. The chief looked at me, looked at the woman, sighed, and had his officers holster their pistols. And he beckoned for us to follow. I was amazed by this woman. She knew as much as I did, and yet managed to prove I knew something they didn't. The chief let us ride in his car as we headed to the station for the 5th time. About halfway through the hot road, the radio cut out abruptly. "Breaking news," it screamed. 3 people are found dead in the town square, and there is no murder weapon to be found, and the killer has fled the scene. Without warning, the chief turned on his sirens and lights and sped screeching down the road. The moment we arrived, I jumped out of the car and ran to the 3 bodies. Now, the total was 5. When I saw it, the mistake that would change everything, and we knew about this case. Next to one of the bodies was a pool of silver liquid. I was astonished. There, in plain sight, was the same silver liquid I had saw that destroyed the lab. At the destroyed lab, the very liquid that that killed the man on the train. I almost wanted to touch it to see if it was even real. What did you find? The woman asked as she walked over to me. When she looked down, her eyes widened. Is that? She said. Yes, I replied. It's Walking Dead. It was at this point it clicked. The killer was trying to use two different stories at the same time. However, he must have known one detail I put in every book so that no two stories were the same. They finally did it, I said, chuckling, looking at the woman. Did what? She said calmly. They tried to blend two stories to throw us off. But what they just did was lead us closer, I replied. I don't get it, the woman said, confused. Let me explain, as I said, standing up. In each book I've written, there is a note that I make within each story so that no two stories overlap. That way, each story has a different ending, and each story has a different weapon of murder. That way, it's always different no matter how many times you read the story. If you use the same weapon in each story, the murder will always be the same. So, the life is in two places at once, right? The woman said, trying to finish what I was thinking. Precisely, I responded. The killer was so sloppy with the story I have read that he decided that he couldn't tell where it started or where it ended. He didn't know, as the stories are meant to loop. Which means we can follow it, right? Not exactly, I said, pointing at the body. The kills were clean. There's no blood and no stab wounds. Only the Walking Dead is left behind. Now we know the killer is using the same murder weapon, but that's all we've got. So, what is it now? The chief said, walking over to us. The killer slipped up, sir, I said. He made his first, and hopefully his last mistake. And what would that be? He said unbelievably. He left the equivalent of a smoking gun behind, I said, pointing at the silver pool. The officer woke over and stared at the pool of liquid. Isn't that the silver we found before? He asked. Yes, I replied. Well, what are we going to do about it? He said. There's only one thing we can do. We follow the clues. The woman, I looked at her, and she looked back at me. She was smiling. Or at least, I thought she was. My goodness, Alexander, she replied. You just seem to know everything, don't you? I do my best, I replied. I may not know absolutely everything, but I know most of everything. Hi, Dad. We went back to the station, and we continued to observe the officers. Taking some melatonin so you can go to sleep? Good night.
Good night. Good night to everyone on your screen.
Yep. And so, as we continued our adventure, we swiftly headed home after going into the station. The woman finally decided to do something extremely rare. At least, according to her, it was extremely rare. I had to ask her one more time, but I needed an answer. Why do you wear the mask? I asked. She pulled her cloak down and threw it on the sofa. Still wearing the outfit from earlier, she replied, I don't want people to see my face. Because if people see my face, then they'll know who I am. And if they know who I am, my mystery disappears. Fuck the mystery, I replied. You just can't live your life in mystery forever. If you live your life in the shadows for eternity, then you'll never be able to make a connection. And she looked at me with her violet eyes and said, but I made a connection with you. And I've made a connection with millions of people online, too. I've been to conventions galore. I've been to stories. I've been interviewed. And yet, I've made connections without ever revealing who I truly am. You, however, your stories were revealed by creating universes that don't exist. And now, baffling the world, your story has come to life. And you can't ignore that any longer. We must solve this case, Alexander. For if we don't solve this case, it might damage your reputation forever. She wasn't wrong. I went back upstairs and continued to work in my office again when I heard a knock on my office door. And I went, and there she was, standing again. The woman, this time instead of wearing the jeans and a purple shirt, she was wearing a bright blue dress. She had a corsage on her left shoulder, and I noticed that she was attempting to hide her chest because she had her arms crossed like this. Why are you hiding why are you standing like this? I said, gesturing the way she was standing. I don't really like this dress, but I'm gonna go out and wear it for once. And I said, why not? Is it too revealing? And when she moved her arms, there was another family crest stretching from shoulder to shoulder with the bird's wings outstretched. I said, that's gorgeous, staring at the beautiful bird, and she quickly covered herself up. She said, I hate that bird. I hate it with a passion. Why do you hate that bird so much? I asked. Because it's so obvious. It's so out there. The family crest on my arm is one thing, but I'm upset that I had to wear such a bird on my chest and my shoulders. Then why wear a dress that's so open? She looked up, because it is my family's wishes, and I will return later. I said, family wishes? I thought you said you were the last of your kind. Now, her eyes were changing colors from purple to a more human color. They became brown. She said, with a sorrowful tone, I'm adopted. Because, as you did say, and as I've said, I am the last of my kind. Suddenly, I looked at her arm, and as if, without a touch, she put a single finger on her arm and moved it over her family crest. And when she did so, the crest disappeared. And she did the same thing with the one over her shoulders. It disappeared as well. When she pulled her hair back, I almost screamed. She pulled her hair back, and her hair went from being a bright, sparkling purple to a bland and basic black. I said, you can change you can change how you look? Are you a morphling? No, she said. I'm none of those evil things. But my adopted family is very strict, and they force me to hide who I truly am. And she took her mask, turned away, and took it off, and put a different one over her front of her face. And when she turned back, it was a solid white mask with only her eyes showing. I said, my God, what's wrong with your family? She goes, nothing. I just don't like showing my face, and they tend to want to show my face. So I tell people that I can't because it's scarred. And before I could finish what I was saying, there was a knock on my door. And I went downstairs and followed her. Her family was standing outside. Where the hell have you been? Her mother scolded her. We've been looking all over for you. Her father looked down and depressed. Now, honey, he said, we've told you numerous times not to go to strangers' houses, let alone run away from home. We let you go to a convention, but you haven't been back for 4 days. It's time to come home. Yes, Mother, she said with a voice that sounded more normal than any of her previous voices. It sounded too human. She turned and looked at me, took off her mask, and covered her mouth. And she said, with a tear coming down her eye, "I'll be back in about an hour or so. They won't be able to hold me for long." And she covered her face and turned around and walked to their family vehicle, which was a van. The mother was staring, looking at me. "Who are you?" she replied with anger in her voice. "Oh, my name's Alexander Jones, ma'am. Your daughter's been helping me considerably with the story I've been writing." Her having any talent? She can't even sing. She can't dance. She can't write. And I looked at the vehicle, and there she was, head down, hunched over in the back seat. "Ma'am, you're mistaken. She's a genius. She's wonderful." And the woman began to get in my face. "Now listen here, Alexander. I don't know what you've heard or what you've seen, but that girl in that vehicle is a burden on us." And the husband cut her off. "No, she's not," said the husband. "You make her a burden because you don't let her reveal who she really is. And you've made her hide herself so much with this family that it is almost depressing how much you oppress her." They began to fight right on my doorstep. Hold on, I said, trying to dissuade this conversation. "Let's not fight on my doorstep. May I come with you to this family gathering?" "Fine, whatever. Just put on your best outfit," said the woman, as if completely ignoring the fact I just asked to be invited to a family gathering. So I rushed upstairs and grabbed my black trench coat and threw it over and put my hair up. I rushed down to the vehicle. "May I sit next to your daughter?" she said. "No, you will sit in the middle and she will sit in the back," said the mother. Extremely aggressively, I might add. Hold on, guys. And with that phone call, we're going to finish with this last bit of the story. As I sat down into the van and I looked in the back, I heard the sound of sniffling coming from the woman. She now seemed extremely short, as if no more than a teenager. In her at least 16 or 17 years old. And she was crying. I asked her, "Why are you crying?" And her exact response was, "I wish not to live in this world anymore. It's my family." And with that, we will end this first half of the story here. Next week, on Tuesday, we will finish the story. Maybe we'll even finish it later when I return from my adventure. But for now, I bid you all a wonderful evening. Thank you all so much for coming. Vortex Gaming 0705. Thank you so much for the follow. You are absolutely an incredible person. I hope your stream goes well. Seriously, I hope it goes well, and I hope it's been going well. You all have a wonderful evening, afternoon, night, whatever. And without further ado, I bid you adieu. Later.